I might eat the first two, I would never eat the last two. This is pufferfish, and it's a Japanese delicacy. It's also extremely poisonous, so much so that it takes 2 years of training before you're allowed to serve this stuff. Because one pinhead of the neurotoxin found in these things can kill 30 humans and there's no antidote. Ackee is the national fruit of Jamaica, and it can only be eaten totally ripe. If you eat it unripe, or if you eat these black seeds, you develop something called Jamaican vomiting sickness, and it can kill you. This is fried monkey brain, and it's served primarily in Asia. And somewhat ironically, if you eat this stuff, you run the risk of developing something called Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, which is like mad cow disease, and it drills little holes in your brain and ultimately kills you. And last but not least, you have blood clams, which are popular in Southeast Asia. They can cause hepatitis, dysentery, and typhoid, and roughly 15% of people that eat these things will be infected. Most of you will be guilty of number 3. You're on vacation in Illinois, and a local salamander dealer comes up to you and he says, "Hey, can I interest you in buying 76 salamanders?" And you're like, "Actually, that sounds pretty good. I can get a lot done with 76 salamanders. Give me all 76. You fool. 75 is the legal limit. On the last day of your tobogganing trip to South Dakota, you're feeling tired, and so you decide to avoid the slopes that day and hit up the local cheese factory and take a tour. You get inside, you start feeling sleepy, and you decide, you know what, this is a good place to take a nap, and so you do. You fool. It's illegal to nap in cheese factories in South Dakota. It's nighttime and you've just arrived in New Hampshire for the National Spelunking Championship, and you're totally stressed about the competition the next day. So you go down to the beach to collect yourself, clear your mind, and you notice a huge amount of seaweed on the beach, and you think, maybe I should collect this, and so you do. You fool. You can't collect seaweed at night in New Hampshire. The crazy part is, most people believe that these 3 things will actually save your life. They don't. Let's pretend you're at the ATM and this guy comes up behind you with a knife. He demands that you pull out as much money as you can and give it to him. But you remember that if you just punch in your ATM code backwards, it will still give you cash, and it will tell the authorities that you're being robbed. Except that's a myth, and all you end up doing is locking your account, making your attacker that much more suspicious of you. And so what does he do? He gets ready to actually attack you. But what do? You remember that you're a karate master, and so of course you're gonna fight back. And so while you're getting in your stance, he just instantly stabs you. Because disarming someone with a knife is so hard to do, even if you're experienced at it. It's like trying to disarm a child who's got an uncapped marker without getting marker on you. It ain't gonna happen. So now you're stabbed, but you remember, I can just yank this bad boy out and apply pressure and be fine. But that's not true. You bleed to death.
Did you know that gummy bears actually have a really dark history?
So gummy bears were invented in the early 1900s, and they were originally called dancing bears.
Now, in Europe following World War I, dancing bears were quite the attraction.
And people didn't see anything wrong with this, which I find crazy.
The bears would often be chained, made to wear silly clothing, and usually their teeth would have been completely removed so that they were considered safe for the public.
These bears were a very popular attraction at fairs and carnivals in most European cities. And this is literally what gummy bears were based off of. I had no idea they had such a dark history. And obviously later on they changed it from dancing bears to gummy bears, which is a lot better. And they're definitely not associated with that anymore, but it's definitely sad to know the history.
Oh, stranger.
This This is why you should never play hide and seek. A mom decided to play hide and seek with her 2 kids. The mom began counting, ready or not, here I come. She begins searching the downstairs kitchen because she knows that they hide there every single time. As she's walking to the kitchen, she starts saying, I wonder where they are. She looks under the table and sees they aren't there, which is kind of odd. She knew they were too scared to go into the basement alone, but she decided to check anyway. They weren't there either. She began to panic. The mom then says, Jordan, Casey, come out now, mommy's not playing anymore. There was no answer. Panic really begins to set in. She decides to call 911 and reaches an operator. She tells the operator what's wrong and the operator sends an officer to her house. Once the officer arrives, he says, don't worry, we will find them. As she's sitting in the living room, she hears giggling and laughing and hears a closet door slam upstairs. She sprints upstairs and says, Jordan, Casey, you worried me sick. She opened the closet door and nobody was there. While all of this is going on, she hears the doorbell ring. She runs downstairs and finds the officer holding Jordan and Casey. The officer says they were hiding in the shed out back. Then Jordan looks at mommy and says, why were you telling us to stay in the shed?
Here is another abandoned Disney park that you're not allowed to go near. This was called River County Water Park, and it first opened back in 1976. The park was filled with excited families and squealing children speeding down water slides. It was complete with rocks and man-made boulders you can jump off of, and in the first year it opened, it had around 4,700 guests per day. In 1982, a 14-year-old boy from North Dakota drowned in the resort after going down Whoop and Holler water slide. There were no signs saying how deep the water was, which is so dangerous, and lifeguards that worked there came forward and said that dozens of people had to be rescued from that slide each day. And then in 1989, a 13-year-old boy ended up drowning in the park. So since then, the resort has been left to rot, filled with overgrown moss, abandoned rusty water slides covered in vines. No one has stepped foot inside ever since. There are 2 abandoned Disney World parks that people are forbidden to go to. In this first video, I'm going to be talking about a park called Discovery Island. This is located in the middle of Disney World's Bay Lake, and it's only accessible by boat. The purpose of Discovery Island was to showcase interesting birds and protect wildlife. It was housing 500 different endangered species. There were free-roaming birds, animal shows, treetop walking, and there were different areas of the park like Alligator Swamp, Flamingo Lagoon, Primate Point. But the island had to close this park on April 4th of 1999, and now you're not even allowed to get within 50 feet of its shoreline. Now there's many reasons why it closed. There were free roaming alligators everywhere, which was so dangerous. Apparently the animals were being treated really badly, and there was a deadly bacteria that was found in the park's waters. An 11-year-old was killed from a brain-eating bacteria. It freaked everybody out and probably ultimately led to the closure.
This is how you can help your favorite creator go viral. Number 1, watch their entire video. Number 2, like their video. Number 3, post a comment. Number 4, follow them if you're not following them. And number 5, hit the share button, hit other, and then cancel.
Creepy Facts Part 1. In 1945, Lloyd Olsen beheaded one of his chickens, but it didn't die. It went on living for 18 more months. There's a parasite called the guinea worm that can enter your body through drinking infected water, but you won't notice anything until about a year later, when it breaks through your skin to release larvae, and at that point the worm is a meter long. Judith Barcy, the girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time, was killed in 1988 when she was just 10 years old, along with her mother, by her father in a double murder-suicide.